Hello friends, welcome back. Mr. Squiggs here again, and today we're actually gonna set up a little bit of a town here and build some buildings and hopefully achieve some kind of a domestic population. Now, last time we were plopping down some cities, buildings here, planning out the downtown, and it probably looked like I was just throwing down buildings pretty randomly, and in fact, random is exactly the word. So upon reflection, I am wondering, I might change some of these buildings around. I might, for example, leave a little bit more space at the corners. I might move some buildings around, but this is why it's good to have everything in a sort of blueprint mode before we've actually paid for anything. Just for example, I did feel this police station was maybe just a little bit too close to the road, and maybe we'll want to fix that. So, the other thing that we were talking about in the last episode was that we are going to need some maintenance facilities, not too close and not too far. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So the vehicles in this game are truly our magic agents. The vehicles that are driven by people in real life don't require workers in this game. It's one of the reasons that agriculture is going to be sort of our first actual production chain. It's that most of the crops don't require any workers to get produced. We'll just buy a few vehicles, we'll just burn some gas, and we'll get some things produced. So, first things first, why am I looking down around here, around the port? Because I'm going to want to build some parking spots. We're going to need a basic road depot. The road depot is where we buy vehicles. So we're not going to be able to purchase any vehicles without that. It's basically a square of asphalt. And in fact, am I paying for the asphalt? There's a free road depot. I might start with a cheapo free depot, and we'll move on from there. Maybe I don't like putting the driveways too close to intersections. So let's try maybe flipping that around. And we will definitely need technical services. So technical services depots are for garbage vehicles and snow removal vehicles. And again, just at the very beginning, we might take a free one, and we'll see what our needs are like. We will upgrade or replace this at some point in the future. So, the next thing I'm thinking of is gravel and gravel roads. It's one of the very important resources in this game, gravel, because we'll need it for almost everything. If I look at my storage building here, my warehouse, it needs gravel. If I look at this distillery, it needs gravel. Almost everything needs gravel as part of sort of the first stage of its construction. Now, most buildings, they actually need more concrete. The gravel is a cheaper and lesser requirement compared to the concrete. But, surprise, surprise, we're going to need gravel to make concrete. And the other thing is that our starter roads will be composed purely of gravel. So if we want to get a decent road network set up, we're going to need gravel. Traditionally, I tend to put this close to wherever our starter coal is. Once again, we're not gonna, I would love to not use any coal, leave it all in the ground, that sort of thing. But unfortunately, it's just not realistic. Even if, we might avoid burning coal for electricity, but even if we manage to avoid burning some coal, it's pretty tricky in this game. You need some pretty special mods to be able to make cement and concrete without coal. Same thing with steel. I think I have one mod which I might use, which is a steel mill that uses a lot of electricity instead of coal. But apart from that, we are going to need it to build almost everything. So that's another reason I like to leave sort of the resources on, even though it's less realistic at the very beginning. Is, sure, if we're talking about bauxite and uranium, maybe we don't deserve to put a mine for that on the first day that our city exists. Maybe those things really do require research. But coal and iron are basically ancient industries. They are, iron especially, but even coal. These things are mined going back hundreds of years. I don't believe people don't know where the deposits are by the time we've reached 1960. Right, so for that reason, I am gonna go into this metallurgy. Maybe we'll see. Okay, that's all. Maybe it's in fossil fuels. It's in fossil fuels. There we go. We'll take a look at the coal mines. And again, I'm hoping we're not going to burn too much of it, so I don't think we need the biggest coal mine. Maybe just take this one with tracks. And we'll just look at where the deposits are. And this is going to basically turn green. There we go. Where it turns green, you have a lot of coal. And there we go. And if I try to hold left mouse button, see, there we go. That's the difference with this game versus, say, a city's skylines or something. Where it's yellow, where the building footprint is yellow, it's basically telling us, see, we're on a contour. We're on a yellow contour. The land is not flat enough. If I go to check from build using rubles, it's going to tell us what this mine costs from rubles. It's about 80 grand to build a coal mine, but it doesn't know how much land needs to be flattened. It doesn't know how much that's going to cost. And that's the number one reason I like to flatten things out in advance. And actually out here, if I go back to build from resources, it's going to search for excavator or bulldozer in a nearby construction office. I think we're simply too far. So I could throw down another free construction office, but frankly out here, this is not the downtown of our city anymore. I'm not quite as afraid of creating a little contour, right? And here they're saying it's flat enough, but once I plop it down, look what happens to the contours. When it's flat enough, it still makes the footprint of the building perfectly flat. So it still does do a little tiny bit of free terraforming for us and moves the contours around. Now, if it's a really big building, it will sometimes still let you put it down if it thinks the ground is flat enough, but it can create some quite sharp contours at the edges that can get in the way of building a road, building whatever connections the building requires. So that's something to watch out for. But out here, out in the middle of nowhere, where I'm hoping not to have too much development anyway, I'm not super afraid of just plopping down a couple buildings. And we are going to need a couple more. We are going to need, at a minimum, storage and some processing. The tough part I think I mentioned about this coal mining is that even though we don't want people living near here, we're going to need workers. I'm going to end up having to build a road or a rail line, maybe a bus at the beginning because that's the cheap option. But I'm going to have to bring workers from the town out here to work and to mine the coal. But guess what? When the coal comes out of the ground, it's actually not usable. If I go back to my coal mine, it's producing mixed waste, and it's producing what they're calling coal ore. And if I go and take a look, just for example, at a vanilla coal power station, it doesn't consume coal ore, it consumes coal. And what we actually have to do is have this coal ore processing plant. This coal ore processing plant is what is basically a refinery. It basically turns that coal ore into something usable. And guess what? It needs workers too. So I will usually like to keep these nice and close together. We'll maybe build this a little, it's a bit of a bigger building. We'll maybe build it a little further away from the mountains on the flatter land. But yeah, that's going to be absolutely essential. And in fact, what I might do before I even put that down is put in some storage. You know, maybe a small aggregate storage building. Oh, that says it's small, but it's kind of large. 2,000, is there a littler one? There is a littler one. Look at that. That's nice. I just want to maybe keep out of the way of this railway here, if I can. Hoping that I won't have to be mining so much coal that the railway is necessary, but I would rather ship the coal out from here than build lots of coal mines everywhere. I'm really hoping to minimize our usage of the coal. So this is just going to be a coal ore storage. It's not going to really be used even for our final product. This is just in case, for any reason, the coal mine is operating at a different rate or at a time that our coal processing is not able to operate. And I do have a bunch of mods installed, but again, hoping that our needs are limited. I'm liking this vanilla one that only needs, you know, most of these mods, they're bigger. They're to give you more and more output. You know, how much is this going to do? This is going to do consumption at maximum production, 210 tons of coal ore. And what's our mine doing? Our mine is doing per worker 4.2, maybe 200 workers. So 400, 800. So yeah, so that you know that I think is why most of these mods are looking at more workers and more production, because really a single mine could be producing enough for about 4 of these coal processing plants. You know, but we are not required to fully staff our mine. We could just set up our coal processing here and hope that just one is enough. And we're gonna need some output storage. We're absolutely going to need some output storage. So I might just want to mention why I'm putting these buildings so tight together. These conveyors are expensive. They require a lot of steel and they require mechanical components. Both of those are pretty expensive, and all of this is going to have to be built from cash before we ever, right? The processing plant alone, 130 grand, my goodness. We're 80 grand for the mine, right? These are major expenses. You know, the conveyor, I guess it's not that much. It's only 5 grand, but you'll see if I just move them a little further apart, it really is pretty much by length, by distance, that the price of this is determined. So 5 grand just for this little bit. Imagine if I put them just a bit further apart, 2 or 3 times further, it really would creep up to 10, 15 grand pretty fast. And we don't want to spend all our money on just the conveyors, right? It's as much as a whole storage building. Just these 2 little conveyors, they're costing almost what this storage building is going to cost. So, but I will put an output storage maybe over here somewhere. Okay, and we'll absolutely need to get some roads going. let's maybe just take a look. We're totally off of the main grid, but that's just fine. Just put together some straight-ish roads. Do these have one-way connections? I hope not. So, that's gonna be sort of our coal-producing area. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. You know, once we have a need. Almost everything I'm leaving in blueprint because I want to build it when there's a need. These buildings are going to need to be built right away because without everything here, our citizens are not going to be very happy. The other resource, the reason I wanted to set up the coal and at least have an idea of where it was going to be, is because I like to put my gravel production nearby. The main two components in producing cement and concrete in this game is gravel and it's coal. So it's very convenient if your gravel production is near your coal production. Now the gravel, it's not mentioned here, but just like other resources, you do need to have the sort of fertility for it. But the reason they don't mention is because the fertility exists wherever you have this rockier terrain. And this stays even if you flatten some terrain. So I'll show you what I mean. If I go, I think it's in construction. We'll just get a vanilla gravel quarry. See where it turns green? The greenest parts are the richest deposits. And gravel, again, it's one thing where I have a way of avoiding needing workers. I have a mod here. Again, just like with the coal, you get quarried stone, and they are expecting me to ship out a measly 15 workers to constantly convert this quarried stone into proper gravel. Why couldn't this be done by machine? This is one little corner that I like to cut with a mod where it does just simplify it, and there is this big gravel mine that does just produce gravel directly. And I want to cut this corner at the beginning. It's a very important corner to cut, and I'm going to explain why. We don't need workers to build some gravel roads from scratch ourselves. We need a truck to carry the gravel. We need an excavator or a bulldozer to smooth out the gravel. And we need an excavator in this building that I'm going to put down that actually basically mines out the gravel. That's it. So by cutting this one tiny corner, we go from needing a pre-existing population that can be bussed out just to produce gravel to a situation where we really can actually run the game, advance time without spending too much money and get a few roads built out of it. And unfortunately for me, with this big gravel mine, the trade-off is that we're going to need to do a bit of terraforming because the fertile areas are just not flat enough. So we might just take a peek and see what it looks like to terraform from cache. You know, I might go on this side over here where it's good and fertile. Oh, but that's the steepest part, of course. Maybe there's somewhere less steep, maybe a little further away. Yeah, I really want them close, though. This side's not bad. This side's not bad. So, I'm gonna cautiously turn on my auto build using rubles, and maybe we'll just do a small brush, a controlled terrain smoothing, and we can see the cost. Boom. Almost no change, and we are out $1,000, 1,000 rubles already. Gets expensive fast. Sometimes you have one like this, where it's almost sometimes cheaper to raise the low areas, the lake beds, rather than to chop down the mountains. So let's see if that gets us a bit of a fertile area. The edges makes it look like it's a fertile area, but it's hard to tell until you actually see. So that's the other trade-off there. Yeah, no, not a fertile area. Okay. We're gonna have to study these contours a bit and see what our options are. Okay, so the gravel is proving a little bit more difficult than usual, but I may have just found a solution. There we go. I think that right there is the best we're gonna get, and we're gonna see if there's any way we can build a road down this very steep grade. Probably not. Oh, this is gonna be tricky. Is there another smoother face of this mountain? Basically rounding off the top of the mountain, trying to get some flat area. I'm trying to smooth some of the edges where the contours are far enough apart. Maybe on that side we will be able to build a road up the side of the mountain, for example. But wherever it's red and wherever they're close together, it's not guaranteed that we will be able to get a road up there. But it does look like the top of this mountain is where we're going to get exposed to the best area for gravel. And how we're going to get the gravel down off the top of this mountain, yet to be determined. All right, let's see where there's a good spot for our gravel mine. All right, we could get over 50% fertility there. That's not bad. And I'm guessing our road is actually going to come up this face because it's the least steep. Okay, I guess we're going in that corner. And I want to go pretty much as far as I can, but maybe leave a little space because we are going to have that output. Which maybe I'll rotate around. Tricky. Okay, I might just accept a 50% fertility there, because to be honest, this big gravel mine is capable of producing a lot. Probably more than we need. Okay, so we've succeeded at getting a road up there. Not many vehicles will need to drive up the steep grade, but it's just that we gotta keep everything connected in case there's a fire or something, or if we simply don't have the cash to store or this gravel that's coming out, right? But anyway, let me just find another little aggregate storage. Oof, that's gonna be a pricey one. I'm almost considering a cableway instead of a conveyor belt that long. That's gonna be expensive, but I don't think I have room. I don't think I have room for anything else. Let's just see what the cost is gonna be. Okay. Well, maybe I misremembered. Maybe I was exaggerating before. I had in my mind some figure here of 30 grand for this conveyor, but to be honest, this might be within budget for our starting game. There's another piece that I like to put for aggregates, which is just truck loading. Truck aggregate loading. This really, it seems inconsequential, but these storage buildings that let you drive up, for the most part, they are extremely slow at loading onto a truck. A truck that goes there will wait forever. This is just basically a little depot that it does what it looks like. It conveys the gravel up high and then just drops it into the truck. So when we're building gravel roads, we're going to have basically big dump trucks that are going to come here and get some gravel, and we're going to want them to load pretty quickly. We're going to want them to be able to load up. So we'll build some more roads. And maybe at this point I might consider connecting all this by road to our relevant city block. I'm guessing it's this one here. So maybe I'll just do a little more smoothing. Okay, so now you're going to see one of the things that happens when we smooth out or flatten out a very large area. We are going to start getting these contours, right? The height, the terrain height over there, way over there, is different from the average terrain height over here. So to keep it the same, I'm building up basically higher and higher. I'm going into a lower terrain area is what's basically going on. So the more we extend out this flat part, the more we are going to get this steep grade, these red and yellow lines that we're starting to see. So there's two options. A, we just stop flattening, and we just accept that the ground's going to be lumpy from here on out. B, the other thing I like to do is start a new grade. Once I get red and yellow colors, I like to maybe flatten out at a different grade. And then what we can actually do is just smooth out that boundary, that line between the grades, so that roads and other infrastructure will not have a problem crossing the boundary. And there we are, we're reaching the limits of the range of the construction office anyway. So I might just do some general smoothing out, make those contours nice and gentle, and we won't have any problems building our infrastructure out here. Let's get a little road sketched out. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight. I think we're a little bit of a... Okay. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but that one's too crooked. Maybe do some smaller sections just to keep it in the range where I want it. Okay. So, gotta build some roads out here to our gravel area. Okay, so we've got some sprawling infrastructure laid out here. One of the reasons I'm fixating so much on these gravel roads is that it's kind of needed to build the downtown. When the dot people who live in our residences are trying to access services, they need things to be in a walkable distance. But unfortunately, these starter mud roads, they're really not ideal in terms of the speed. The driving speed is different, but actually in this game, the walking speed is also different. So if we really want our population to be able to reach all the various corners, all the various amenities in their neighborhood, we are going to want to have some gravel roads, maybe even before we actually pay for all these buildings. It's just going to make things easier. It's also going to make it more efficient to build everything else if we already have a gravel road out there. And in fact, what I might do is build a secondary road maybe out to here. Okay, so why have I taken all this trouble to build all these roads way out to the middle of nowhere? It's a concept that I refer to as redundant connections. In this game, construction takes a while. And when we're building a road, most of the time, except for traffic that was already planning to transit it before it became a construction site, any new vehicles will see the road as closed, and they will not be able to use it. So that's why I think I mentioned before, I like to do loops. When I'm designing a road network, I like loops. It's okay if they're square, but for all intents and purposes, this is a loop, this big rectangle that we've got. And what that means is if we decide we're going to put gravel down along this road on the right here, that's fine. We can close it. And vehicles that need to, say, make it out to this mining area, well, maybe it's a bit more of a circuitous route. Like maybe, let's say, for example, we have a bus coming from this bus station here, trying to go deliver workers here. It's gonna suck if we close this road here, because their direct route will be closed, but at least they will have an alternative. At least there will be a roundabout way, and we basically always want that to be the case. In fact, we're going to have a bit of a struggle to get this part paved. It's going to be a dirt road for a long time because not a lot of cars use it, right? I'm only going to have one little section here that just some trucks that drive slow and carry gravel will be the only things that come out here. So it's not going to be a high priority, and it's not going to be technically feasible until we have some other gravel storage elsewhere. Think about it. To get this built, once I put down a construction site here to build a gravel road, the vehicles will not be able to reach here. I'll need a redundant connection or a second mud road or something. Vehicles will simply not be able to reach this spot because this road will be closed. So I'll need to either have another gravel production or another gravel storage or a redundant connection. There is always the possibility of buying roads from cash. I don't like to do that because of just how darn cheap gravel really is if we produce it ourselves. It's basically free. Once we pay for these few buildings, yes, there will be maintenance on the buildings over time, but pretty much that's going to be it. We'll pay pennies worth of gasoline in the tank of the one vehicle that works here. We won't actually need workers to work here. And we'll get the gravel almost for free. So it's a significant savings versus paying for roads. Roads, they're not very expensive because the materials that go into them are not very expensive, but compared to building them ourselves, building roads is very expensive. So that's sort of the main thing. So I might bite the bullet. I might pay for these first few buildings here and I might do another bigger construction office. We'll see. Let's see what we're gonna do. Maybe for now I'll put another free tiny one. When we're actually building buildings, we will need a big construction office, a proper construction office with space for lots and lots of vehicles. But at the beginning, when we're just doing some gravel roads, it will be nice to have a free one near the source. So what do we absolutely need? We need some dumpers, dump trucks. And we can sort by speed, we can sort by cost. Really, that one's the most expensive one, but it carries 25 tons of gravel, which is just incredible. You know, it's 2.5 of these, but that makes it still a bit expensive compared to these cheap Czech dump trucks. So we'll get one of those, maybe 2 of those. And the other thing that we need is either a bulldozer or an excavator, but we own those already, so I might just tell some of those to drive from here to the other construction office. I think that's what we're going to do. Now, there's something we haven't discussed at all yet, which is gasoline. It's actually in the roads here. Fueling. And again, we're lucky that the devs have given us a free dirt square where we can get a free gas station at the beginning. The gas stations are essential for these vehicles. These vehicles are always based at a building, and as they go out and do whatever they're programmed to do, they're going to consume the gasoline that's in their tanks. See, this one even starts pretty close to empty, so it may not even be able to do a full job before it needs some gasoline. So what happens here, you can see I've got these ruble signs here. When we put down a gas station, by default, and this is because we're on the non-realistic mode, by default it's going to purchase resources using rubles. This is a magic, unrealistic importation, but unfortunately it's necessary for us at the beginning, and it's the real reason that we need exports. As soon as we are doing anything, we're going to need some exports, because what's happening here is that we are buying fuel as though we bought at a customs house, but they're charging us a huge 30%-ish markup to magically teleport it here. Right, we would have a savings if we sent our own boat out across the water to collect oil and distribute it. But we are just not going to be able to afford to set up an oil and fuel transportation network at the beginning. Why? Because they are so specialized and they use tons of steel. This cargo harbor we built, it's going to work for all kinds of goods, import, export, but not fuel. Liquid fuels absolutely require their own special pumping harbor. Look, it's just for these 4 goods. So it gets very expensive to build a pumping harbor, to buy a shipping tanker that can't carry anything else, only these 4 goods, to build storage tanks, to build pipes, to have trucks that will truck out the fuel everywhere. At the beginning, our fuel needs are not going to be enormous. We're just going to have a few vehicles. So we just can't afford, with our 4.5 million rubles, to spend so much on storing and transporting fuels when we don't even have an oil industry yet. And an oil industry, we will set it up. We'll set it up pretty early on, hopefully, but not right away. Not at the very beginning. At the very beginning, sorry to the lovers of the realistic mode, we're going to magically import some fuel from cache, and that's what's going to keep these vehicles running. If there's no gas station with fuel available, yes, in their range, they're going to stay in this depot. They're going to refuse to work. And in fact, I might put another one up here as well, because the same goes for the construction vehicles. I've been sort of cheating because of the fact that the game is paused. But if I look at the vehicles here, a few of them are going to complain, hey, I don't have any gasoline. So they've still been letting me terraform, but the minute I unpause the game, they won't let me do that anymore. They're going to say, nope, I'm no longer in working mode, I'm in looking for gas mode, and I will not do any more work until I find a gas station with gas in range of me. And they're going to drive there, and they are going to fill up on some gas, and it's going to charge us automatically right away. Now, this game has really good reporting. Just by hovering over, we can see the import and export. So right away, once vehicles start accessing gas stations, we're going to see right away some negative dollars there because we will have imported some goods. We will have imported some fuel. So we'll be able to track pretty easily the approximate rate at which we're burning gas. But that's something that's very important to have a few of. And I am going to need one right up here as well, because there will be a super slow... I might buy it already. We're going to absolutely need this gravel mine. But once this gravel mine finishes, we're going to put an excavator inside it that will permanently stay there. It'll work there full time. It will replace workers. Basically, this gravel mine is giving us two options. And even the vanilla gravel mine does the same. The idea with vanilla is you have the quarry using just an excavator, and then the processing plant requires those few workers. So it's those few workers that we're sort of cutting the corner and not going to require, but we are going to require that one excavator, and therefore we are going to require some gasoline to be readily available close by for that excavator. So I'll put a little gas station close just to minimize our downtime, because what's going to happen, maybe we'll catch it in the act, but the excavator will stay where it is. It won't be driving, but it will be moving. It will be using gas a little bit to produce the gravel. When it runs out of gas, we're going to have downtime. It's going to leave and search for fuel. So it will be ideal to have a fuel depot very close. And do I really need one here? I'm going to put one here as well. What I like to do in the early game is that I like to put the little free gas stations everywhere, because early game we're using buses to transport people around. Buses are just too cheap, and the volumes of passengers that we are transporting are small enough that buses are really the best option at the very beginning. So, problem is that when we've got crappy roads, slow, low-speed roads everywhere, that effectively everything is far apart. And from the bus's perspective, it can take a lot of time, a lot of fuel, just to do a basic refueling stop. So I like to put a gas station pretty close to where vehicles are stored, to bus stops, and to anywhere else that they might need, like a waypoint along their journey. You know, if a bus makes it just 30% of the way to its destination and runs out of gas, sometimes they do weird things in this game. Sometimes they decide to turn back. So in those cases, it's nice to have a gas station sort of halfway along a route. Here I might not do it. Here I might just temporarily stick a little one right in my downtown, just for use by these buses. In fact, where's my clinic? Is this my big clinic? Clinics store ambulances, and guess what? Those ambulances need gasoline. If I got a police station somewhere, it's gonna have police cars. Guess what police cars use? It's gasoline. Okay. So, I am tempted to run the game just for a day just so that these buildings can be built and we can get some gasoline filling up our gas stations. And maybe we will also move some of this equipment over. You know, let's have... Right, one thing, all the construction offices are this way. You have to configure where the resources get picked up, but you also decide if they automatically go and build anything yet. At the beginning, I'm going to keep that off. I think I'm just going to take this bulldozer, move it to here, take this excavator, move it to here. And they won't go right away. They will physically drive only when the game is running. And I guarantee they will almost certainly get gas right away. Either they'll get gas before they drive over, or they'll drive over, and as soon as they get there, the first thing they'll do is go and search for gas. I might just do one last little modification to the roads here, because guess what? We have a nice opportunity to build a loop. And as I mentioned a few times, I like loops. Right, having a loop is going to make it much easier to pave with gravel, at least. Okay, here goes nothing. We're running the game. Buildings are getting built. Gas stations are buying gasoline. So just to show, if I change the amount, it doesn't happen instantly, but it happens pretty fast. If we go here, we're already spending money. We're already importing resources, mainly to build this. And now our money is pretty much stopped changing because construction's finished here. I'm going to go ahead and pause again, and maybe we'll just check on our vehicles. Let's see. Yeah, see, they left. Now, 2 of those should be trying to go... Yeah, he's going to go directly. It's kind of a bit of a missed accuracy, but it helps not clog up your road networks. If you tell a vehicle that's out of gas to go to depot, it'll go to depot. It won't do work. It won't transport what it was supposed to transport from A to B. It won't do anything else like that, but at least so that it doesn't get basically broken down in the middle of nowhere, causing a traffic jam, your vehicles will go to a depot. It's just that once they get there, they'll never do anything until they've had a chance to leave the depot and get some gasoline. So I'm guarantee you that's what'll happen when these 2 arrive finally, slowly at this other end. They'll go there. Now we do need to buy one more vehicle here, which is going to be an excavator. And as soon as we buy this excavator with gasoline in its tank already, it's going to start producing some gravel. Now, we have a big issue, which is that there's no electricity. The drinking water is not an issue because this building can use just a vehicle. Oh, see, look, it's going for gas already. There we go. But instead of workers, we only need excavators for this building. That's it. But the conveyor we're going to have gravel build up in the internal storage of this building. This conveyor requires electricity. All these other buildings require electricity. So that's a bit of an issue that we're going to have right off the bat. I think, unfortunately, we're going to build eventually a small coal burning station around here. But one small coal plant, this is my pledge, this is my promise. One small coal plant and no more. We do have access to some wind turbines, so just to get our coal... Oh look, it's working anyway. That's interesting. I'm not totally certain it's supposed to be able to do that. But that's very interesting. It's pushing the resources out. I don't think I'll be able to get anything to load on a truck. Interesting. maybe I don't need to pop down a wind turbine. But if we really had to, in remote places where there's not a huge demand for electricity, but we need some, there are a few sort of little green power stations that we can just plop down, and they would just supply sort of the local area. And they're pretty expensive at this stage in the game. They use a lot of mechanical and electronic components that are expensive to import. So I don't know if we can power our entire town from those right away, which is why we might need to build one tiny coal-fired plant. But as we get going, as we get developed, when we eventually have some production of our own mechanical components, or at least exports that we can sell to use to buy other stuff, then it really might be possible to build our own green energy. We'll really be able to afford it before too long. But at the very beginning, we can't do anything without electricity, and we're going to need to build a micro electricity grid, and unfortunately coal is going to be what's available at game start. So how close are our vehicles? They're getting there. You can already see where I've terraformed. The grass starts to heal right away. I will pause again though, just see what else is going on. Because we're going to build some roads, but before we hit the 1st of March, I might want to set up some agriculture. And that might be what we do next time. Yeah. So, yeah, it might be time to set up some agriculture. I know I promised that we build a few of these buildings, but I think I decided I want to throw down some gravel roads before that happens. Yeah, so I'm gonna make you wait one more episode for the gravel roads. Really what's going to happen, I think I want to set up some agriculture. I want to show you how the agriculture works. It's just so important to the economic health of our town. There's just so many prerequisites, that's all. But yeah, stick with it. I'm Mr. Squiggs. We'll have another video soon, and we'll take a look at the agriculture and get our town set up. Cheers.